Hello, everybody.
Hey, Councilman Shade.
Hey, Mr.
What's up?
Chairman.
How are y'all? So I'm having problems logging in on my computer. I'm on my phone. So I will need some eyes and ears to help me as we, people who raise their hands, I need to be acknowledged. So
It
apologize
seems
for
to be
that.
an ongoing problem. We're gonna have to go look into this for you.
Well, sometimes it works and sometimes it does. I feel like I'm in the 18th century on occasion. Who knows? It was working fine this morning, but anyhow, do we have a quorum present? Is Robert Mitchell with us? Councilmember Mitchell?
Don't see him.
Let's wait a few seconds for him.
He's
to
not,
join in.
but I think we have a quorum.
We do.
Madam Clerk, any word from Mr.
We have not heard from him, but we do have a quorum.
Okay. Of course, while I'm using my phone, I get people call in. So that's another problem, but that's okay. All right. We'll call to order the Public Safety Committee meeting of December 20, 2021. I'm going to call on Councilmember Seekings, if you wouldn't mind leading us in either a moment of silence or a prayer, please, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In this day of celebration, holiday and reflection, let us all think of and put a prayer in for those who are less fortunate, those who are struggling, those who don't have loved ones to turn to in their times of need, and recognizing that each one of us is an avenue of happiness for somebody. And let's all do our best to reach out to someone over the course of this holiday season that we normally wouldn't have done so. Make us and everybody else better for it. In God's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well done. Appreciate those thoughts. The first item on our agenda after the moment of silence is our minutes of December the 6th. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. The minutes are approved as written. Item 3 is approval of a memorandum of understanding between the FBI and our fire department on a joint terrorism task force. Chief Currier, are you online with us?
Good afternoon, everybody. I am, yes, sir.
How are you today, sir?
I'm doing great, thanks. How are you?
Good, good. So do you want to give us an overview of this MOU?
Certainly.
That kind of rhymed a little bit.
So I think the high level with this is that very similar to the police department and how they embed somebody with the Joint Terrorism Task Force. The FBI office out of Columbia approached us, and they want to have a fire department person on an as-needed basis support their efforts with the Joint Terrorism Task Force, either through training of their personnel or through some intelligence sharing. This wouldn't be a full-time position, and by the FBI's own design, the overtime that is generated is not to be paid back to the municipality. But we've partnered with them over the last year on various activities, mostly related to paramedic response for warrants, and the overtime is not much at all. So what the FBI in Columbia is trying to do is they're trying to show that this is a viable national model, that integrating fire departments on a joint terrorism task force would be beneficial. And if it's approved, what the FBI plans to do is seek grant funding to revert some of the costs back to the fire department, or some of the funding back to the fire department.
Okay. So I'll entertain a motion to approve this MOU. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Sounds like a good thing to do.
Chief Curry, I just assumed we had something like this already in place, quite frankly. And it makes just good common sense. The more we coordinate with our other partners, the better off I think we're all going to be. And hopefully we never have to use this MOU. But thank you for that report. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you, Chief Curry. And don't go anywhere. I have another question for you later on the agenda. The next item is approval to apply to the Rotary Club of Charleston a leadership grant for an amount of $30,000 for training. This is an after the fact approval. The mayor and I are both members of this Rotary Club, I think, and also Councilmember Carl Brady as well. And Mike, Councilmember Seekins, didn't you join our club recently?
I am also a member currently in good standing. I plan to stay that way for the near and distant future.
So we're all a part of this wonderful organization that's has a long history in the city of Charleston. Steve, are you here to talk any more about this?
Move for
Grant?
approval.
Okay. Is it second? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, ayes have it. All right, and now we're going to get a report from the U.S. Homeland Security. I think we had a little bit of a glitch last meeting with this, so we're back on track to have our update from Homeland Security.
Unfortunately, council member, we have another glitch today. So, Scott Crabb, who's the agent that was giving the presentation, I emailed him last week after we rescheduled, only to find out that he was off last week, didn't get my email until today, and he was not available to give the presentation. So there was a little bit of a miscommunication, and I think the chief had indicated to him that we'd get to him in the new year. So if we could defer this and then reschedule, and I'll make sure that we have him and all the technical issues are worked out, so we can do that in January sometime, hopefully.
Steve, thanks for stepping up to the plate and giving us update. And maybe the third time will be a charm from him.
I certainly hope so. Yes.
Yeah, that's an important discussion we need to be having anyhow. All right. So the last item on our agenda is something that I wanted to bring up. I've been receiving complaints from several of my constituents dealing with noise that's traveling across the river from mainly from either the Joe or from Lowndes Grove. And I don't mean to single them out by any means, but water does have a way of traveling noise, either live music or recorded music across the river. And so I asked our legal department and our wonderful Dan Riccio to give us sort of an update and an overview of our existing noise ordinances and how we may be able to address this. So either Julia or Dan, are y'all available to lead this discussion for me, please?
I am. I'm not sure if Julia's on yet, but I'll go
She's
ahead.
on.
Is she
She's
in?
on. Yeah.
All right. Julia,
I'm here. I'm here.
Okay.
Hey, Dan.
you want me to go or you want to go?
Yeah, you can take the first stab.
Gee, thanks. Well, Mayor, as everybody's aware, the current noise ordinance, which was actually first adopted in 1975, the last update was 2011, which is all encompassing with times of being able to have loud music in courtyards. And then it's defined as amplified. It gets a little ambiguous. I think moving forward, as far as the noise ordinance is concerned, I think it's important that that legal and all, I guess, departments that are applicable to the ordinance can meet and maybe streamline it to make it more clear, especially for evidentiary and prosecuting reasons. But I'll tell you, I know Lowndes Grove has always been an issue. We do have occasions from time to time with complaints. I dug through the zoning application this morning with Amy Sutherland. She's went to the files from 1990 when they were first approved. Now, this might make you happy, Councilmember Shahid, but it might be a little ambiguous, but it does state in here from Lenny Krawcheck's handwritten note that scratched through amplified music. And it says that no loud music is allowed outside of Lowndes Grove during any of the events that they have there. Now, they're allowed to operate according to the approval from up to 12 a.m., but cannot start back up until after 8 a.m., which is more or less an hour difference from the primary noise ordinance. So I think at this point, and I'll let Julia speak, we did speak earlier that this might be an issue to where we go back to zone.
And there he goes.
I think we
I'll-
lost Dan, didn't we?
I'll finish his sentence for him since
Yeah.
he fell off. Dan, you back yet?
Yeah.
It's more of
yeah.
a zoning issue.
Yeah.
When
Go
it
ahead.
comes to Lowndes Grove.
Yeah, it is more of a zoning issue with that particular location and what we've looked into, Councilman. And I think Julia would like to maybe convene a meeting with them going forward. But again, we need to also regroup as city staff and take a deep dive into the current noise ordinance, because I'll tell you, it's all over the map. And it really needs to be clear and concise, which will help the police and us when we have to enforce it. But I'll let Julia pick up.
And Julia, before you get on, Dan, we had other discussions dealing with noise ordinances, and those went before the Public Works Committee that we dealt with. It's been over a year, but we were dealing with things with construction noise, I think, or
Yes.
work-related noise. So your point is well taken. There seems to be more than one ordinance dealing with quote-unquote noise. So when you say it's all over the board, I would presume that's part of the issue as well. We have different ordinances dealing with noise regulation.
Correct. And the construction noise ordinance you're referring to is under public service, under the building code, because of the nature of the construction, whether being your private citizen versus your contractor. And then it's further defined as larger projects, construction projects, and days and hours of operation. But I think, honestly, to be more clear, going through both ordinances, particularly 2116 loud noise, and really doing a comprehensive view is important at this time. And we can also simultaneously deal with the issue with the zoning approvals for Lowndes Grove itself, and maybe have some more compliance that way.
Okay, thank you, sir. Before we go to Julia, did anybody else on the committee have questions for Dan before Julia jumps in? Seeing none, Julia, you want to pick up from that discussion, please, ma'am?
Sure, I'm happy to. I'll make it brief. I mean, the noise ordinance is very subjective in nature, and this apparently has always been a topic of heated conversation. Do we want to keep it subjective, or do we want to turn it into like Savannah or Berkeley, where it's rated by decibel level, and then that would require the purchase of new equipment to help police measure, make it a bit more scientific when citing people. So that's, a conversation that council is going to have and a decision council is going to have to make if they want to make these kind of significant changes. With the noise traveling over the water, Councilman Shade, our noise ordinance allows amplified music up until 11 o'clock. So it really depends on the hour that your constituent was complaining about the noise. If it's coming from the baseball stadium, or if it's coming from Lowndes Grove, the noise ordinance does allow for amplified music up to 11 o'clock, and that's when they have to shut off. So, that's something else we got to look at.
I just think perhaps if we look at our other ordinances dealing with noise, and Dan brought out the one dealing with construction, and we have a consistent policy, that's going to make it easier for, I think, the police and our code enforcement folks, and for council as well, and judges too, I would suspect. So where do we go from here? Is this something that your department's going to take the lead on and just go through these various ordinances and see what we need to tweak?
Sure, we can offer up examples of neighboring cities and see if council's open to adopting something similar to those that are different from ours, we can give you options to look at, or we can always do that, and legal would take up the lead on that.
Okay. All right.
Peter, the mayor has his hand up, and then I
Okay.
have my hand up too.
Thank you, Councilmember Seekins. Mr. Mayor?
So thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate those comments. I will say, even though music might be allowed up to 11 o'clock, that if it's exceedingly loud before 11 o'clock, we can certainly, I know it's subjective, but you certainly can make a report and ask for it to be turned down. You know, this topic came up, Mr. Chairman, when the hotel task force in its later days met about the issue of rooftop bars. And we discussed the noise coming from rooftop bars. And then we discussed the fact that it wasn't just hotels, it was just noise in general. And there was the intent of both legal and planning department to take a review, to do a review of our existing noise ordinances or ordinance. As Dan pointed out, it hadn't been updated since 2011. I guess that's 10 years ago. And I think it's appropriate for us to go back and do that. I think it's between COVID and I don't know what else, it just got put on the back burner. My pet peeve is the motorcycles. And I know there's supposedly a part of the ordinance that if the muffler system has been doctored from the original, that we can disallow the motorcycle from entering our city limits. I know we don't have the personnel, but if I were king for a day, we'd have an inspection place to verify every motorcycle coming into the city, whether they comply or not, because they're just obnoxious. I'm sorry. Maybe it's the way they're driven sometimes. But I think a full review of the ordinance is appropriate. Technology has changed. You know, I think in the past we were afraid to measure decibels and all that kind of stuff. But I do believe we got to get this thing a little more objective and enforceable than it is now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I appreciate you reminding us about the rooftop discussion that we had as well. So just another example of uniformity may be a key component of this as well. Councilwoman Seekins?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And the mayor sort of touched on most of the points I wanted to make, but I think, and I know that Dan will back me up on this. Ever since I first got elected, now almost 13 years ago, this has been a topic that's come up every couple of years, and we've tried to get our arms around it. And Mr. Mayor, one of the big issues has always been, can we set a decibel level that is agreeable to everybody and then enforceable? And the answer to both of those questions has uniformly and very loudly been no. It's very difficult to find that number. And then when I got elected, Steve Steiner, God rest his soul, called me and said, there's 3 things you need to be aware of as you enter city council. I forget what the first 2 were, but the third was noise and the noise ordinance. And it was surrounding the Governor Bennett house. I think Councilmember Mitchell probably remembers this. Governor Bennett house had lots of parties, lots of loud noise, and they got hauled into small claims court by the neighborhood association. And they actually entered into an agreement over hours of operation and a decibel level. And the decibel level lasted literally about 7 seconds, because what came from that was no one could agree how to calibrate the decibel meter. No one could agree where to take the decibel reading from. Was it the middle of the street? Was it the edge of the street? There was questions about which direction the wind was blowing. Was it east or west? Because that made a big difference in the neighborhoods, much like it does across from Lowndes Grove across the river. So I would be interested, without asking our legal team to do too much work, what other jurisdictions have done vis-a-vis a more objective decibel-based test. But I think, word to the wise, it comes fraught with its own set of issues. And for certain, Mr. Mayor, the motorcycles, as you can well imagine, in downtown District 8, the motorcycle noise is something that we hear about all the time. And if there's something we can do, great. But I think this one is a little thornier than you might think, Mr. Chairman, in terms of finding a decibel level that works, and then how you actually take that reading and then bring it forward to court. It's tough for sure.
Yeah, I figured
Not unworthy, but definitely tougher than you might think.
Well, I don't want to open up Pandora's box on this,
Right.
but as Dan said, it's been since almost 10 years since we've had another discussion on it. So it's worthy to see what we can and cannot do. And I appreciate everybody's weighing in on this. So Julia, we'll look to you and Dan to come back. You've heard our comments on this thing, and we got the holidays coming up in the first of the year. So let me know when you're ready, and we'll pick this back up at the appropriate time to see what options we have available. It may just be something that we look at hours as opposed to decimal levels. Your point, Councilmember Seekins, as well taken about that, and it's just
I think if you look at activity rather than the decibels, you're probably heading down the right direction. And if there's some discretion, I think that those who are charged with enforcing it, whether it's Dan's team or the police, giving them a little bit of discretion is probably a pretty good thing.
And the other thing we probably can be looking at is containment of some degree. So while they're outside in the open, maybe we require them to put up some kind of sound barriers. I don't know the answer right now, but I'll look forward to a healthy discussion the first of next year.
Councilman Shea, can I ask you a question?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. Councilman Sheila.
So most of these recent complaints are coming out of the North Bridge area is what I'm hearing. Is that
North Bridge and Charleston Estates, and also Councilman Shealy, when the county park was being next door to Charlestown Landing, West Pawnee folks had some complaints about other types of noise as well. So it's been a lingering issue back and forth.
Okay. Well, thank you. I mean, I'm surprised we're hearing those specific things when you've got the Legree Waring House and you've got the Founders Hall right there, almost in those neighborhoods, and we're not hearing that, I guess, when you say specifically about these others. But I would hate for that to affect the fireworks that go on at the River Dogs game as well. I don't know if that's what you're talking about as well. But
well, I have to tell you, Councilman Shealy, I have a vantage point of view, and everybody's welcome to come to my house on Friday nights during baseball season, because I can sit on my back porch and I have a bird's eye view of the fireworks. So I agree. I don't want to take away from the fireworks on Friday night, which is a different kind of noise. I mean, it's just it may be music to some people's ears and annoyance to others, but I agree with you. I don't want to interfere with that part.
And you got to be careful with that one because they are loud. It is later in the evening. It is every Friday night. And again, depending on which way the wind is blowing, it's louder in some places than others. So
well, like I said,
if the game goes into extra innings, it gets pushed up close to 11 o'clock sometimes.
That's true. So like I said, we may be opening a Pandora's box on this thing, but I think it's worthy to have a discussion about it and see where this leads us next year. Okay.
Hey, Dan, before you go, do you still have a copy of that agreement between the neighborhood association and Legree Waring? Or
it was actually with the neighborhood association and Judge
Steiner
gave the order. And yes, and it's worked very well since, and they have off-duty officers from PD with the decibel reading or whatever you call it, meter, and it's been effective. It's been very effective, and as you know, it was a big challenge even that far back. So
Julia, if you don't have a copy of that, you ought to take a look at it, because at least that was some attempt between somebody who's creating the noise, the court, and the private sector to come up with a solution. Whether it's ideal or not, I don't know, but if Dan says it's been working, and I haven't heard a lot of complaints about it lately, although COVID probably
not lately. And it's basically, it sets out a schematic or a view of the courtyard and where the bands are allowed to place and where the speakers are supposed to point, the volume that it's supposed to be at. It's very restrictive, and that's easier to enforce, if you will, with the wording that's in that that court order agreement.
And Mr. Chairman, the closest resident to that entertainment venue shares an law office with you. So
Well, I know.
he's an expert. You could probably ask him to give some advice on how to go out approach this.
Well, actually, his wife will be one who will complain. Thank you. So before we adjourn, and I do appreciate this very robust discussion, Chief Correa, I forgot to clue you in at our last council meeting, committee meeting, but you had put together a schedule for tours of fire stations. Are you still with us,
He's not.
Chief
Yes, sir.
Correa?
Yes, sir.
Oh, there
I'm
we
here.
go.
Yes.
Yeah. So my mistake. I told you I was going to prompt you about tours of fire stations at our last committee meeting.
Mhm.
And as Councilmember Seekings just reminded me, sometimes you sit on these meetings and there's nothing on the agenda for you, and we need to recognize you and give you the opportunity to chime in on something that may not be on the agenda, but you want to update us on or bring to our attention. And I'm going to fix that coming next year for you and Chief Reynolds. If you don't have a specific item on the agenda, just leave that as a standing agenda item to say anything from the fire department, anything from the police department. So we'll cover that.
Perfect.
But you did have, you and I have had some discussions about fire station tours, and did you want to talk about that real quickly before I let you go?
Certainly. Thank you. After the conversations that you and I have had, the mayor and I discussed it last week, and I've got 4 Fridays blocked out, and 3 of them are in January. 1 goes into February, and just trying to break the city up into the different sections where we could go and look at the firehouses and see really what work has been done over the last couple of years, because there have been a lot of projects that we have been able to accomplish, but then also what still needs to be done. I think infrastructure in the firehouses is one of the highest priorities that the mayor identified for me when I came in a couple of years ago. So I'll send the schedule out, and then depending on how many council members want to go to the different firehouses, then I can line up transportation, or if it'd be more convenient for everybody to just meet at one central location and travel to the firehouses in separate vehicles, we could do that also. But I think it would be beneficial to see exactly, where we are, especially in different areas of the city that require some growth, like Cainhoy. So I'll send that schedule out sometime in the next day or 2.
That'd be great. I just wanted to alert members of the committee about that. And I know that Councilmember Shealy, you've raised some of those questions before as well. And I took a tour of some of the fire stations, firehouses within my district, and it was an eye-opening experience. And I thought that was very worthwhile for me, and I think for the committee and for other council members as well, and the mayor, to take advantage of this opportunity. So Chief, thanks for putting that together and for creating the logistics for that. So we'll get back in touch with you and see where that leads us next year as well.
Great. And could I add one more thing?
Yes, sir.
I was speaking with Chief Jalazada a little while ago, and he's on the call, but it's probably about time for the fire department to update this committee on our efforts with diversity and inclusion within the fire department. So I had sent every council member an email back in July, I believe it was, just detailing a position that we had created in the fire department. So we've been working towards that, but perhaps sometime early in 2022, we could carve out some time and just have a discussion.
I will put it on the agenda, maybe not the first meeting in January, but maybe the second meeting in January to do that.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief, for bringing that back up. And I do remember that discussion we had earlier this year. So thanks for the reminder.
Thank you.
Any other item we needed to discuss for this committee meeting? All right. Seeing none, we will be adjourned, and I'll see a good number of you guys in about 30 minutes or so. Thank you all.